Welcome, folks, to this very special edition of Tech Sales Advice. I am, of course, your host, Chris White, and I am just so excited for today's session. Now, look, I've had a lot of great guests. In fact, all of my guests are fantastic. But the gentleman I have today is someone who, first, I consider a friend. Second, someone I consider a mentor. Mr. Tom Stanfill, he is the CEO and co-founder of Aslan Training and Development. He is the author of a very recently published book called Unreceptive, which we might talk about a little bit, and just a super good guy. Tom, thank you so much for joining today. How are you doing, my friend?
Man, it's thank you for that introduction. It is great to be on your show. I mean, you got a show. I mean, I think back when we first met in San Francisco a couple of years ago. And by the way, I just have to mention this, that Chris and I first met, we were out to dinner in San Francisco. We were at a trade show, Selling Power together. He was a good friend of our head of marketing at the time. And we're having dinner, and two rainbows two rainbows are in the background. And I'm like, this is a sign, Chris, we're going to work together forever. So glad
and here we are. I mean, that was I think there was might have been 4 years ago, Tom.
Was it 4 years ago? Yeah. And you were thinking about writing the book.
Yeah.
You were talking about it. You were, and look, you've written the book. It's super successful. You're helping a lot of people. And so I love that you're part of our team. Yeah. We've got a relationship. Obviously you got your own gig, but we work together. So I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that, the gentleman you mentioned, Scott, when just as I had launched my business, obviously I was talking to Aslan about becoming, a certified Aslan instructor, and I was sort of towing the line, and it was Scott who sort of kicked me over the ledge. And by the way, he did so in a way that is actually in line with some of the things that we're going to talk about, by asking, not by telling me what he thought I should do, but by asking just the right question in just the right way that helped me sort of find, the truth for myself. And I know one of the things that we're going to talk about is truth. So Tom, just if you don't mind, just take a minute and share. I'm curious to just, have you share just briefly the story, because you were running, in essence, a call center, 25 or 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And you made some changes, or you encouraged or coached your folks there, and then that turns into this successful sales training organization 25 years later. Do you mind taking just a minute and sharing?
Yeah. Well, I think it's helpful to understand the beginning origins of Aslan, because it was an amazing lab that we had developed to test a lot of these concepts that we're still teaching today. So what the organization I started did, we were really a BDR. We had 100 BDRs. Yeah. Back then it was called telemarketing. I'm embarrassed to say, but people would outsource lead generation to us. This is before the internet. This is where the only way to get people's attention was to either mail them something or call them on the phone. And so we had 100 kind of college age people, who were looking for part-time work, who were smart, calling businesses to find out their need for a product or a service or a solution. Yeah. And so we were making, thousands of calls every day. So we basically were trying to figure out, what works. How do you get these people to talk to you? It was the most difficult call or sales, part of the sales process that you can really imagine. And so that's where was the birth of a lot of the concepts we developed. And we realized that people weren't rejecting a solution. They were rejecting a salesperson. They were rejecting a sales call. And so we had to develop our own methodology and own approach and own strategy for how do we get through this difficult process. So anyway, that's where it started. And we had developed our own training program. I ended up selling that company. Tab was running training, who's our co-founder of Aslan. And we ended up basically taking what we learned there and offering it to other companies.
Yeah. Well, and I used the word truth a moment ago, and I'm going to draw attention to one of the truths that you just shared. And it's one of the truths that we talk about a lot. And that is, people are not opposed to real solutions to real problems.
No.
People are opposed to being sold.
Exactly.
And the problem, the challenge is that, and we talk about this, is that many people in a sales role have basically been taught to sell. And that's
sell equals manipulation, sell equals push, sell equals force, sell equals control, sell equals convince. And selling really is about serving. Selling really is about finding out what problem the customer has and bringing the best solution to the table. And if they don't need your solution, or you can't offer the solution, like a doctor with integrity, we would say, I can't solve that problem for you. You need to go this way. So, and if sellers had that mindset, think about customers would be like, I can't wait for the next salesperson to call me because all they do is solve my problems. How exciting it is that sales reps are reaching out to me, but that's not what they think.
No.
No.
Well, and just hearing you say that, can you imagine people saying, gee, I'm so eager to hear from the next salesperson? Like opposite is the truth. And to that extent, one of the things that you and I were talking about offline briefly is now more than ever, this is critically important. And I don't think there's anybody who I've heard sort of describe the why this is so important now as well as you have. From your vantage point, why is this so important these days?
Why is it such a big deal? Yeah, well, in McKinsey, we did a study that demonstrates that this is more important now than ever. The number of customers, the percentage of customers who want to talk to a seller when evaluating a solution, they're in the hunt for a solution.
They're actually looking for something.
The percentage of customers that want to talk to a seller has dropped 120% in the last 3 years. So it's like now 30% of customers want to say, hey, I'm looking for this solution. I'm trying to evaluate it. And that's just 3 years. It's just plummeted. And so what's really happened is every time you kind of put it in the terms of just tactical day to day, every time we reach out to a customer, whether we're prospecting or we're trying to change their opinion or view of a solution we offer, they're in one of two zones. They're either emotionally open, like I'm come in, tell me about what you have, and I'm open, right? Or they're emotionally closed, right? Which means I don't really care what you're going to tell me. I don't want to talk to you. It's my wife and I have a lot of conversations with my wife. Like, she's emotionally closed, and the more I try to persuade her, and here's the truth, the more I try to persuade her, the more closed she becomes. The more you try to bust in the door, the more they are going to try to close the door. The more you try to sell your solution when they're closed, the more closed they become. So actually the traditional approach backfires. So everything we've been taught about selling, which is all about convincing and taking people to court and making our business case, the more we do that, the more closed they become, the more they're going to reject our idea. And so all that to bring back to your original question is more people are emotionally closed. And so the traditional approach doesn't work. We've got to change what we're doing. And the good news is sellers who we just interviewed, Tyler Bergman on our podcast. He's works for, we've trained Tyler, I don't know, 5 years ago, and he is outselling the number 2 person in his firm 2x.
Wow.
So he's lapping the second place seller. And I said, so Tyler, why are you more successful? He said, because I'm focused on creating receptivity and not selling.
Yeah.
It's like he's learning how to get people to open and get them receptive, not just sell them. And because he understands those two dynamics, he's killing it. And he's getting 25% more meetings. So it does work. We just have to change what we're doing.
And I bet he's also more satisfied in his role.
Amen.
Well, right?
And that's why I think there's the great resignation in selling. And I think that's why people are losing interest in selling, is because people are telling them every day, their leadership, come in, bang more doors, send more messages, push people, work, which I'm all for the disciplines of selling, and you got to get your message out there. But it's doing the same thing we're just running out of opportunities. But it's a great opportunity for those who are willing to change, because it's your competitive advantage just to sell differently.
Yeah. Tom, let me pause just for a moment and welcome anybody who may have joined Folks, I'm speaking with Tom Stanfill. He's the CEO and co-founder of Aslan Training and Development. He is the author of the recently published Unreceptive, and someone who I'm delighted to be able to call a friend. By all means, if any of you have any comments or questions, any of you care to say hello or ask any questions, please do. Actually, Tom, we do have a question from another good friend of mine named Ramsey Marjabal. Ramsey actually runs a podcast of his own called We the Sales Engineers, one of the thought leaders in this space as well. Good question. If customers are emotionally closed, why do they agree to meet to begin with? Now, I have an opinion about this, but I'm gonna toss this your way first. I have a feeling there's a few directions to go with this.
Well, when someone's emotionally closed, either the door is closed or the subject is closed, right? So door or subject. So the door could be open, like you could have a relationship. Like I can walk in and talk to my wife anytime I want. The door is open, but there are certain subjects that are closed. So I can get a meeting, and I met with a pharmaceutical rep not too long ago, and he told me a story where, I've been talking to this customer for 10 years. We've worked together, and they buy A from me, but they don't buy B and C. And we can have lunch and we can hang out, but they're not going to talk about B and C. And I said, and he knows they're emotionally closed to that concept. Yep. And so we need to learn a new skill set and a new mindset to open the door or have the conversation about B and C.
Yeah. It sort of falls into the category of like, don't go there, or let's we can stay.
We're not talking about that,
right? Let's not go there. Incidentally, my friend Bill Balmain has joined. Bill's been through my workshops.
Oh, awesome!
And has become a big fan of the Aslan program. So Bill, it's always good to see you, my friend.
Thanks, Bill. And I appreciate the encouragement online. Bill has been always comments, and I love knowing that what you do works and matters.
Indeed. It's interesting. I want to get to touching on this notion of sort of being open and closed. Tom, I've actually been running a poll in the workshops and as you know, I run a lot of workshops with account executives and sales engineers together.
Okay, great.
And one of the polls that I run is on a scale of 1 to 10, how open or closed, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how open are blank to new ideas? Number 1, yourself. Number 2, your sales counterpart. And number 3, your prospects and customers. Now, I am batting 1,000 on results. How would you guess we judge ourselves, we rate ourselves on being open to new ideas?
Oh yeah, very open.
Like a 9.
Yeah, right. Very. Oh yeah. Oh, I'm always open to
And our sales counterparts, they're high, but not quite as high as me, right? So my sales counterpart usually somewhere between 7 and 8. Our prospects and customers usually between a 4 and a 5. Like, I have done this countless times now, and I always get a line that looks just like that.
Right.
And I say to them, now, folks, if I were to go to your prospects and customers' place of business and run the exact same poll, what do you think they would do? How do you think they would answer any differently than us? Right.
Wow. Yeah. What did they say? I guess you haven't done that.
I mean, it's one of those things.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
The point is made, right? Is that
they know it's not true.
People want to believe they're open to new ideas. But to make your point, if we come with, we like to say commission breath, right?
Right.
We're more likely going to, face a closed door. So Tom, I set you up a little bit. So what do? What should our strategy be when facing a closed door?
Yeah, there's definitely some skills we need to learn, but I would distill it down and just say there's a couple of key things that we can do that are easy to implement, very counterintuitive, but easy to implement. The first thing is make a decision before every meeting. Now, this is one of those things that's just like, oh, well, what's the big deal? I mean, you're going to tell me to make a decision before every meeting. Well, here's the truth. You need to stop before every meeting and make a decision who's first. Because our gravitational pull to self is so strong that if I don't reset my compass, is what I call it, my compass, because my compass always points to me. Compass works by, the gravitational pull in the North Pole. So the compass works based on that gravitational pull of the North Pole. You always know you are where you're going or where you are in relationship to that. Well, the same is true for us. Our gravitational pull is to self. So before a conversation with my wife or my kids or my customer, my gravitational pull is to me. And if I don't stop before every meeting and take that 5-minute, okay, what's my goal here? Who's number one? And make a decision to serve. Because here's the benefit of doing that. Our motive is ultimately transparent. So if my goal is to sell and not to serve, the customer smells the commission breath. We kind of angle the conversation, or we're not okay with what they say. The second thing I would say is drop the rope. Is really, we got to change our mindset. So this is one of the things that I do when I'm really going to have an important conversation or a difficult conversation. I change my goal from winning, which is about convincing them and getting them to agree to what I do. I change my goal from winning is to, I want them to write down my idea on a sticky note, and I wanted to put it on their mirror, and I just want them to think about it. And so when you take that approach, you're dropping the rope and saying, listen, you don't have to change. This, what you make the call about what's best for you. It may not make sense to adopt my recommendation. I may not have the best solution for you. What I love to do is share some ideas about what I've learned from other companies or other situations or best practices, what I've learned about your organization. I just love you to consider it. So I'm gonna basically share some things I've learned. I want you to put on a sticky note, and you decide if you think that's right for you. And I just want you to put that on a sticky note. And that opens up the conversation because, oh, you mean this isn't an adversarial thing where you're trying to get me to do something so you can make money and I'm going to try to protect. No, there's no. And when that's sincere, which is why decision has to precede drop the rope, then you start to really get some traction. And then the last thing I would say is, as part of that process, you need to be able to validate their point of view. And I know some of these terms seem sort of like, okay, that seems basic. No one does this. When someone has their polarized point of view, our instinct is to counter. You think I should do this, and I'm like yeah. So I think we should do this. And you're like, no, you shouldn't do that. And so until we can validate their point of view as well or better than they can, they're never going to embrace our point of view. So these are all very counterintuitive ideas, but those are that kind of lays the foundation for influence. Yes, and there's great ways to deliver your message, to convince people once they're open, but you got to get them to the point where they extend the invitation. Influence is about an invitation. Until they invite you in and say, tell me what you want. What do you think about this? Until an invitation is served, you are not going to influence anybody. Until my daughter says, tell me what you think I should do related to dating this guy. Until she thinks that or says that, everything I say, she's just going to go, not listening. So it's kind of the way I've been talking about it lately, Chris, is like we've developed all these AI tools that are just state of the art, but the way we sell is stuck in the 80s. Right? The skills and the art we're back in the 80s, but we've ramped up the AI. Good. I mean, let's do that. But we gotta change the way we sell.
Man, oh man, that 5 minutes right there, I'm gonna I think re-record or cut and put on my website for everyone to hear. I mean, you said so many things in that 5-minute little moment there, Tom. I'm gonna drill in on. Before I do, there's a few people I do want to say hello to. Our good friend, Mr. Jason Smith, is with us, and he chimed in. I just want to say hello.
Love that guy right there. I love that guy.
And actually,
he got me through the pandemic.
That's hey man.
Jason and I, we huddled together at Adlin and got through the pandemic together.
That's awesome. And actually a buddy of mine named John Busey is on. So John and I have known each other, for like 25 years, I think.
Okay,
he and I were colleagues, and he called me the other day because he saw me on doing a LinkedIn Live. And I said, you didn't say hello? So John Busey, thank you for saying hello.
This is cool how I love it. How people are saying.
Bill asked a question, but before I get to Bill's question, I want to double click on just a couple things you said because they're so impactful. The first thing you said is this notion of making a decision before every meeting. And you're right. It sounds, I'm going to be honest, Tom, when I first heard what you just said, probably 3 years ago now, it seemed too good to be true for me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what do you mean make a decision before every meeting? Like, that just seems silly. Why do you think, from your experience, why is that so impactful?
Like, it really changes. It changes how you walk in the room. Like, I remember being in a really super competitive situation and I really wanted to win. We were up against 10 firms. They narrowed it down to 3, then they narrowed it down to 2. And the company that we were competing with was our biggest competitor, 3 times our size. I wanted to win and I was nervous. And I was like, well, I got to say the right things and I got to win. And it was all about me. Right. And so when it's all about me, I'm not the customer's favorite story, favorite character in the story. I'm the hero of the story. Right. And then that drives my fear. And so when I made the decision in this situation to say, okay, look, this is about them. And they need to do I need to help them figure out what's right for them. And if it's not me and it's the other firm, I'm just going to do the best I can to show them what I've learned. And so I started, I'd never done this. I started the presentation off with this idea. I said, look, guys, yeah, do I want to win the contract? Yes, I do. But here's my goal today. My goal is simply to share what I've learned for the last 20 years of doing these types of projects. I'm going to share best practices. And through that, if you don't hire me, or you don't hire me, fine. I love you if you did, but if you don't, fine. I'm going to share these truths, and we're just going to walk through it together. And I'm going to answer my questions best I can. And I'd love to help, but if you don't choose me, you don't choose me.
Yeah.
And it was, all of a sudden I just settled down. They all kind of leaned in, and they even said later on, that was really that really changed the temperature in the room. And here's the thing, I meant that. Exactly. And so I meant that, and I was more comfortable, and it was fun, and I was free, and the questions I asked were relevant to them, and it just orients you. Same thing with my wife.
Yeah.
When I walk in the room and it's about me, she knows it instantly.
Of course.
and it shuts it. Here's the thing. Remember, our goal is to influence. Right. So we can't influence somebody if they think we're serving ourselves.
Yep.
And so that's, and here's the cool thing I've learned. And this is also why it's easier for me to do this, to make this decision, is because I'm more successful. And this is the thing about being in sales. When we make the decision to serve, we're not only more fulfilled, we're actually more successful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you said a moment ago, motive is transparent.
Yeah.
I think to your point, I think it really does come through. And as you were speaking, the thought that ran through my head is, if we sincerely have no intention to attempt to sell something that's not a good fit for the customer, like if we really believe that, why wouldn't we approach every meeting reminding ourselves this is about that? I mean, to me, this is really walking our talk, right?
Yeah. Well, and it moves you from being either a billboard or a relationship manager, right? Which both of those really aren't very fulfilling. If I'm a billboard, I just like, here's my thing. Here's what I do. I hope, here's what I do. Here's my thing. If you're a relationship manager, you tell me what you need and I'll get it for you. And that's a very low, unfulfilling approach to our world. But if we're about influence, we need to figure out how we can serve them and what's best for them, which also means there are people we go, look, based on what you need, you shouldn't move in my direction. You should move in the other direction. And I've seen people do that, and it's super powerful, and they make so much more money, and people trust them. People invite them in the room. They're part of the decision-making process.
Yeah.
And you have long-term relationships, but it does require you learning things. It requires you knowing how to serve them. It requires that you elevate your knowledge. It requires that you understand what's on their whiteboard. And so it's not just a kind of a easy sort of, I don't know, and I'm here to serve. It's being diligent about knowing more about how to solve the customer's problem than they do.
Well, and it's interesting you bring that up, Tom, because I think if we've done our homework, if we've studied, as you like to say, if we've studied the people we're serving, if we've studied the industry, then we should have the confidence to be able to approach the meeting knowing that we actually have something to offer, right? We have knowledge, we have insight, we're experts in our field. But to your point, until they invite us, right? Until they ask us, let's not force it on people, right?
Well, think about too how you, even just before they invite you, for them to get to accept the invitation, when you think, okay, my role here is to help the customer solve their problem. Now you go write an email. If you can't write an email and say your problem is this, you can't say, well, listen, the companies I work with are struggling with this. What are you going to say? You're going to say, I do this. Or you're going to try to be creative or funny or trick. You're going to try to come up with a technique or all the, the breakup email. You try all these things versus why don't you just start? If you haven't made a decision to serve, then you start to learn about it and you know what to say in your emails. You say, I serve these types of people and this is what they care about. And then you say those things and they'll go, this guy gets it. This woman gets it. This person gets it. Then they invite you in.
Yeah. Or they don't. And that's okay too, right? Like I would much rather not waste time pursuing people that don't, either have, objectives that align with what I can help them with or challenges that I can solve, right?
Yeah.
In fact, Tom, I'm reminded of sort of a sales engagement, if I can use that term.
Yeah.
Probably in the past 6 or 8 months, where I had a first meeting with a group. And like you, I mean, I sell to sales leaders and pre-sales leaders, and we had a good conversation for about a half an hour. And near the end of the meeting, they said, "Well, Chris, would you like to send us a statement of work, maybe some sort of proposal?" And I said to them, honestly, I'm not sure I can articulate the real problem here to your satisfaction, much less my satisfaction. So before I send you a proposal or statement of work, I would like to suggest that we have another meeting. If that, and they're like, honestly, that we really appreciate that. Like, now that you mentioned it, I'm not sure we fully understand what the problem is either. Right?
I love that. I love that.
That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, it feels like you might be taking a risk, but when you realize this is either about me or them, it's easy to take that risk.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Tom, let me pause this again, folks. For any of you who may have just joined, I'm speaking with Tom Stanfill. He's the CEO and co-founder of Aslan Training and Development. He's the author of a book that was recently published called Unreceptive. And some of the things that we're talking about is certainly in the book. Tom, I have one more just inspiration that I want to share, and then I want to double click on another thing you said. This notion of making a decision before every meeting to reset our ash, if you will, right? Reset ourselves. In the workshops that I run, I say, look, folks, here I am telling you should be making a conscious decision before every meeting to make the other person the priority. And I suspect that there are some of you thinking to yourselves, come on, Chris, do you really make a conscious decision before every meeting to make the other person a priority? I say, folks, I'll tell you the truth. No, I do not. I am no more or less human, and I am no more or less perfect than any of you. But I'll also tell you this. I see the difference between those meetings in which I do remember to make that decision and those in which I do not. And the ones in which I do not, invariably, I catch myself 10, 15, 20 minutes into the meeting pushing my own agenda, right?
Yeah.
And I have to reset myself. Yeah. Do you still find that you are still learning and practicing these principles yourself?
Absolutely. I love that answer. That is, it's so true. I have to, this is why process is so important in selling, because we forget things. There's certain things that I have to remind myself, of every single meeting. I've been selling our solution. Obviously, I'm usually more towards the end of the process now, but I've been selling our solution for 27 years. I still have to go through my pre-call routine, just like every time a pilot needs to fly a plane, they got to go through their pre-flight routine. I got to go through the discovery roadmap that reminds me of I have to go through it. And prepping is key. So, and sometimes I forget, and sometimes I get lazy. But you're right. I can, I'm trying to. It is so. I will say it's such a habit. I so believe that I will be more successful if I serve. And I've crashed so many times. I've violated that principle. I have a board picture that I think of a lot. When I was driving home one day from work, my wife and I share a Pandora account. And the message came up from Pandora. It says somebody else is listening to Pandora. Do you want to listen, or do you want them to listen? In other words, are you going to choose to serve yourself, or are you going to choose to serve your wife? You only have those two options. It is binary. I will either serve myself or serve my wife. And that kind of cements that in my mind, because I think I can do both. And I can't. So, I know we've been talking a lot about this, but it is kind of the foundation of really what drives great presentations. It drives your ability to ask great questions. It drives your ability to deliver a message, create an email, intuitively pick up on things other people don't. Because when we make the customer the hero of the story, we start to learn a lot more about them. So
it's such a powerful foundation. There's another thing that I'd like to quote, double click on, as I like to say. You in your sort of little diatribe there, you said, you used the words "drop the rope." And certainly some of the folks who are listening to us know what that means and know what we mean by that.
Right.
Some may not, and I'm inclined to ask you, what is the truth behind this notion of drop the rope?
Drop the rope, yeah. So it comes from a principle that we coined called the Tug-of-War Principle. So that if you try to force somebody or pull somebody to your position, they will always pull back. Early marriage, my wife goes, "Put your seatbelt on." She's telling me, and I'm like, internally, I'm like, I'd rather go through the windshield. And even though I'm an idiot and she's right, that's what I love that example, because she's right. Right. I should put my seatbelt. But the fact that she's telling me, I saw a funny cartoon the other day where the sign said "No juggling machetes." And the cartoon character looked, I think it was the husband, looked at the wife and goes, "I certainly have this urge to juggle machetes." But that's how we are. We want control. We want the freedom to choose. So when people feel like they don't have the freedom to choose, they're going to resist, even if it's in their best interest to juggle. So, like if I walk into my daughter's room and she was dating this guy and she was her first real boyfriend and she was in love, and I was a little nervous about whether he was right for her. So I walk in her room and I could tell she's like, "What?" She could tell. "Oh, hey, I want to talk to you about what?" You could tell defenses are up. She's emotionally closed. Door was open. Subject closed. And I started the conversation. I said, "Sweetie, you can date whoever you want. I can't stop you from dating. Even if I said you can't date him, you'd see him at school. I can't control you, and I'm not going to. It's your choice. You can date whoever you want." And you could tell, like, she's like, "Okay, so I just want to make sure you're going to be happy and you're not going to get hurt." So that goes back to the decision. And then it goes to the drop the rope, gets very tangible. I just want to make sure you can date whoever you want. So let's just hang out and let's talk. So our lunches and our time together was a dialogue, because I trade the illusion of control for the opportunity to influence. And that's the way I think about it. Control is just an illusion. I have no control over my wife. I have no control over my customers. I have no control over my children. I have no control over my grandchildren. I have no control. That's an illusion. But I want to trade that illusion for an opportunity for them to write down on a sticky what I said and put it on their mirror and think about it. Because that's where I can make an influence. I can make a dent.
I got to tell you, Tom, I have heard you speak, if not live in person, on video hundreds of times.
Sorry about that. I'm sorry about that.
I've never heard you say what you just said, and it's so impactful.
Yeah.
Trade the illusion of control for the opportunity to influence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
like my wife wanted to, like, she was having health problems, and I felt like she should go to, this is where it's really hard for me. Honestly, we talk about what's hard for me is in my personal life, because it's so important. The more important things are, the more we want to control them. Our income is important. My relationship with my wife is important. It's important. Like, the people we don't care about are things we're like, whatever. Hey, I'll drop the rope, whatever. Do. So it's like, that's where it gets tough. We started getting messages that she needed to move from like the traditional medicine to holistic, and she was digging her heels in. And when she dug her heels in, I dug in my heels. And so the tug of war began. And for years, nothing changed. And then one day I just dropped the rope, and that's when she became open.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're right. I think it's those things where we're most emotionally invested, right? Those are the things that are the hardest to let go of. But to your point, the most critical to let go of. And I just want to sort of put an exclamation point just for anybody and everybody who's listening. This whole idea, the truth behind this idea of drop the rope, is that people will almost immediately resist if they feel as though they're being pressured to think or act or do something differently. I mean, that's in essence the truth that we're talking about. Right?
It's exactly. And I think we need to make the point, Chris, because if we're in sales or we're in the role, whatever meeting we're in, we're the one that's going to tell people what to do, or we're going to tell people our recommendation, and we get compensated for that. Whether it's status or money or whatever, there's a win. We're selling our book, right? There is a perception, even if it may not be true, that the rope is being pulled. Oh, I know why you're telling me that.
Exactly.
I mean, I was at Best Buy about a couple of years ago, and this guy walks up to me. I'm looking for a TV, and I know nothing about TVs, and I need help, and I'm confused, and there's hundreds of them. And he walks up to me, the professional TV sales guy, consultant, and he says, "Can I help you?" And you know exactly what I said.
No, I'm just looking.
Because my perception is he's going to try to sell me. He's going to pull me to the TV that he wants me to buy.
Well, in fact, you actually needed help.
I needed help. This is such a great example, so simple, of what way things are. I don't want to talk to you. No, I don't want to deal with all that. Yeah. And so because of the tension, because when there's a tension, the focus is on the tension. And so he says, "Hey, listen, I'm not on commission. I'm not on commission. If you need help, I'm going to be over there. Let me know." I'm like, "Wait, come here.
Come back.
Come here. Yeah. And I'm like, "Come here, and then I just peppered him with questions. Now, if you're in sales, you're probably thinking, well, I can't say that. But you can say something like that. You may be on commission, because you say, hey, listen, I understand. You may not, I may not be able to help you. I may not know what you need, but I just want to help you figure out the right thing. If you need my help, I'll be over here." And that is a challenge for us. We need to drop the rope, but stay.
Yeah.
Drop the rope isn't an opportunity to leave the conversation. It's an opportunity to have the conversation. I dropped the rope with my daughter to have the conversation, not bolt. "Hey, you may not need what I need, so let me know if you do." That's not drop the rope.
Right. Yeah. And again, Tom, we talked about the truth. I mean, I just love some of the truth bombs you're dropping. When there's tension, the focus is on the tension.
Yeah.
Right? And this whole notion of drop the rope, which, as we like to say, is simply communicating in such a way that demonstrates you respect everyone's right to choose, right? Immediately removes that tension. So I just said, look, so Tom, again, let me just pause for a minute, folks. For any of you who may have just joined us, I'm speaking with Tom Stanfill. He's the CEO and co-founder of Aslan Training and Development. I'm again going to just make a mention of the book that he recently published called Unreceptive. Tom, there was a third thing that you mentioned during that brief sort of conversation. You mentioned something about point of view and validating the and let's just say for a moment the customer's point of view or the
Right.
prospect's point of view. Two questions: why first is this so important, and
Mm-hmm.
two, why is this so difficult?
Well, why is it important? Because until here's what happens when we have I think of a globe, right? And you're at the North Pole and you see your way is up, and they're in the South Pole and they see their way is up. You have two polarized points of view, right? Whatever it is. Like I remember meeting with the head of a division at FedEx, and we had gotten in the door and done a pilot program, but he was not, the head of the division was not interested in our service. Honestly, he just showed up for the little pilot program. We were brought in by somebody else, and his point of view was, I have training, it's provided by corporate, it's free.
Yeah.
And thanks for coming in, but
yeah, so from his perspective, I have zero need for any outside help in essence.
Right. And so I'm over here going, look, I've been involved in inside sales. You have an inside sales group, and I've been involved in inside sales for, at this point, maybe 15 years, and you don't know what you're talking about. And so the inside sales is very challenging. There's 18 unique skill sets, and it's required to sell over the phone and selling virtually now. I mean, it's all very different, and your people don't understand receptivity, and I know who your corporate people use, and it doesn't work. And I'm going to tell you why. And if I'd have done that, what would he have said? He would have gone, well, let me tell you why you're wrong. And we would have had the argument. And when the argument begins, influence ends. And so we would have gone back and forth. And I would have felt good and smart. And I would have left that meeting going, that guy's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing. He should have listened to me. But that's not influence. I needed the invitation. So what I said is, hey, listen, so thanks for joining us. And I don't know, drop the rope. I don't know if what we offer could be, I just met you. That's the truth. I don't know what you have. I mean, I know you have free training, or I don't actually didn't know you had free training at the point, but I said, I know you've got corporate and it's a big company, and I'm sure you have all these resources, but tell me a little bit about, your world and what you do. And because we may not be a fit. And so he explains all the things that I just said. And I said, wow. I said, so the last thing you probably need is to pay for a training program. If you've got this company who's well-known and they're probably a corporate, I said, here's what I would consider. Sticky note. I said, there's 18 unique competencies of selling over the phone. There's 18 unique challenges. And if that program addresses all 18 of those, you should stick with that program. Decision to serve, right? You should stick with that program, because you shouldn't hire me if you've got a program that addresses those 18 unique challenges of selling over the phone. He says, wait a minute, what? The 18 unique challenges? Sorry. So I validated him. And so here's two things that we know when we validate. When you have the oh moment, you go, oh, so you have free training provided by corporate, and it's with a big company that's well known and much bigger than you are. Oh, well, that sounds like a good plan. And by the way, that's where empathy comes from. When we really get the other person's point of view and we go, oh, that's why. When I talked to my wife about why she didn't want to talk about holistic medicine, she goes, everybody tries to tell me what to do. No one's interested in how I feel or that I've been sick for 10 years. They just tell me solutions. So I don't want to hear about anybody else's solution. And I'm like, oh, that's got to hurt. I mean, I can feel it right now. And when you feel what other people feel, the temperature in the room changes. And this is the stuff that people they devalue. But this is huge. When you feel what the person you're talking to feels, and you're okay with the fact that you may not be able to serve them, man, the relationship connects. And now you've got the opportunity for influence. Relationship determines influence. Yeah. So then you feed it back to them, and they say, exactly. And you know these things, Chris, obviously you teach this as well. And those two things happen. Then you say, can I tell you a little bit about what I offer and how it might be something you should consider? I'm just going to give you a sticky note to consider. And he says, sure. Subject's now open.
Yeah.
And so I shared with him, I said, hey, listen, here's what we do. And again, I don't know that program like you, but here's what we're willing to do. And let me show you. And he'll set up the next step. And turns out that they were our first Fortune 500 client.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, you know, Tom, you're dropping so many truth bombs. You mentioned when the argument begins, influence ends.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
the moment you dig in, right, as you like to say, the moment you go to court, start your argument, right, influence ends. It is just so powerful. And I have to admit, I don't know if I've ever heard you share this idea of the sticky note. That is such a powerful, we like to call them word pictures.
Yeah.
That is such a powerful word picture, right? It's like approach the meeting, right, or the conversation, not with the hopes of selling or convincing or closing, but with the hopes of having them at least consider putting your idea on a sticky note, right, somewhere in the back of the mind, for consideration at some point, right?
And that takes the pressure off you. The thing is, if you can get them to write on a sticky note, put on their mirror, that is the best opportunity you're going to have for them to adopt your recommendation. And that takes the pressure off me. I don't have to keep my daughter from dating, fill in the blank. I just want her to think about the things that we talked about. And, you know, some of these things take time. And I know that it's not easy for us to, you know, we got a lot of pressure on ourselves to hit numbers. We got a lot of pressure to get meetings, and that's true. And so I want to keep connecting it back to, this is going to help you get more meetings and sell more of your solution. I do want to make one clarifying statement about what we're talking about. We are only talking about people who are closed. Yeah. Right. If someone says, tell me what to do, I want to know what your solution does and why, and why it's worth what you're asking. And I'm ready. I got my notepad out. I'm ready. I'm open. Just go, just tell them, and you can lose receptivity, but this is only for, where we're really focused on is for the people who are jaded, who don't trust you, who aren't open to what you have to say or open to a meeting.
Well, and it's usually, I mean, let's be fair. I mean, it's usually people who don't necessarily know us, right? It's usually,
right. Yeah. Right.
Most people who don't know us, and we approach them in the context of a quote sales conversation.
Right.
We are as sales professionals, we are guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah.
Right.
I love that, by the way, introduction. That was great.
Right. I mean, they're assuming that we're just driving our agenda as they should, because we've all been taught from a very young age that salespeople just push, right? So, and you know, a moment ago you shared a story about, I think you said his name was Tyler, a gentleman who's 2x, you know, above the second person in his organization. This is what makes you 2x above the next person, because you can look, if success in sales just meant closing the deals where people were like, just tell me what we should do, we've got a checkbook and ready to go, sales would be easy.
Right? Yeah. Exactly.
Yes, this is only the people who are closed, but that's where success in sales lives, right? Is behind the closed door.
Yeah, that's why I always like to think about our role in sales. It is to influence. It's not to educate. I mean, educate's part of it, but education is, you're the teacher and they're the student, and they sit there and they're taking notes. That's great when that happens. Yeah. But where we earn our commission when we influence people to think differently, and that's why a lot of this is really important. Yeah. And
I think it's really good. By the way, there's a few people I just want to say a quick hello to. David, I hope I'm saying this right. Is it Piacatelli? I think that's right.
Wow,
he's giving you some love. And
thanks, David.
And Anne Marie, I think it's Keel. Love these ideas, dropping their own. Anne Marie, thanks for tuning in. Very, very nice to hear from you. Of course, Jason sends his love. There is a question from Bill that I think is worth considering. His question is around comp plans, and do comp plans work against this? Do typical comp plans promote this behavior? I have an opinion, and I'm pretty sure.
Great question. That's a great question.
Yeah, I can guess where you may be going with it, but what is your initial thought when you see a question like that, Tom? Because I do hear questions like this as well.
Yeah, I would. Performance is measured by results.
period.
Right. So, yeah. So if anything I'm telling you, if what I was telling you didn't lead to higher level of results, then I would say don't follow my advice. Yeah, this all leads to more results. So compensation based on what, matter of fact, I argue, my belief, all salespeople are 100% commission. I don't care what your comp plan says. We're all 100% commission. We're all getting paid based on what we sell. Sometimes they front us money. They front us a little money, but ultimately it's a very profit driven thing. You have to sell much to pay for your salary. And so I've always been 100% commission sales. So I don't want that to change because I want the control to be able to sell how I want to sell.
Yeah.
I want to be able to say, look, you just pay me for what I bring in. So therefore you can't make me, that might be a little dicey to say, but that's the way I think about it. Don't make me do your thing. Let me do my thing. And I'm going to bring you a lot of revenue. And then just comp me off that. See, if they're going to comp us off our behavior, then they're going to control our behavior. So I would much rather be comped off my results. And everything we've talked about leads to greater results.
Yeah. Hold me accountable for results. Don't hold me accountable for the method. Right.
Yeah.
So Tom, if you can believe it, we've been at this for 50 minutes.
I love it.
And you know, I think you and I could go another 50 minutes, but I want to be respectful of your time and everyone else's. I have one more question, and then I've got a very quick lightning round if we can get there.
Oh, lightning round. Okay.
But my question is this. You've mentioned your wife and your kids a number of times throughout this conversation. Mm-hmm. And of course, what we're talking about are principles that apply to our role as sales professionals and serving in that role. But the truth is these are simply interpersonal relationship principles.
Right.
And I think they do apply to both. And by the way, Bill's question about comp plans, these apply to leadership and these apply to interacting with our families, our friends. What have you learned sort of as you've gone through your journey about these principles that play in the home?
In the home, yeah. And obviously I've shared some examples of that. Well, I think that's the other lab that these principles and skills were honed, is raising 4 teenagers and now seeing them raise their children. Oh, I have 14 grandchildren. So I think that's the greatest support of these principles. If you can get a 15-year-old to listen to you or influence a 16-year-old or a 13-year-old, or your spouse, then I think that's the greatest litmus test for these principles having validity. So I do think they apply to home. Now, obviously, we're not trying to sell a solution, but we are, again, it's about influence. Yeah. It's about, and so, so I do think a lot of this that we were talking about does apply. Matter of fact, I would rather see people apply it in their personal life. And have healthier relationships. And just honestly, that's why I started the company. I was so passionate about learning about what causes, because we're never happier than our relationships, right? We're never, if our relationships are miserable, we're miserable. We're never happier. That's what I always start a workshop and say, does anybody care about something more than their relationships? I mean, we want things, but if you just take our relationships away, we're in trouble. And so relationships begin and end and are maintained by how we communicate. And so all of this is about having healthy dialogue. So live with somebody who pulls the rope, right? Because relationships are dependent upon acceptance. And if you don't accept my willing to choose and what I choose, then the relationship breaks down. That's just one element of it. So, I think it has an impact on that, obviously.
Yeah. No, those words are so powerful. It's interesting, Tom. In some of the workshops, I often refer to dealing with customers and prospects as dealing with kids. I'm like, sometimes customers are like kids. Sometimes they don't know what's in their best interest. Right?
Exactly.
They tell them one thing and they mean something else. And this is precisely.
And they don't trust you, or they don't trust your motive all the time.
Bingo. So true. All right, we're gonna wrap up with a quick lightning round, and then I'm gonna invite you to share just any final thoughts. But in lightning round fashion, as you reflect on your career,
Mm-hmm.
Is there any one piece of advice in particular that you got along the way that has really stuck with you?
One particular piece of advice that I got, I think it was become a student of your customer.
Mm,
Early on, I forgot who gave it, but when I watched people that were successful, that was something that really I noticed the successful people do, who then would, share their advice, is they became more of a student of their customer than their own solution. That didn't mean they didn't learn about their solution.
of course.
And I'm going to piggyback on that and say, maybe more importantly, that just came in my brain, is seek feedback.
Mm,
Our level of effectiveness is determined by the level of input we get from others. And getting feedback and, honestly seeking feedback, like what are my blind spots? What is it that I don't know about? That gets you to that. I think is a growth tool greater than anything else. Because a lot of things we talked about, people are going, yeah, there's your point earlier. You said we take these surveys. There's a self-deception we all have, that we can't see ourselves the way we really are. And getting feedback really helps us take the blinders off and go, oh, I didn't know I did. I had one guy one time tell me, and it's much better to get feedback from other people than get feedback from your customers. I had a guy tell me, why are you crossing your arms? And I'm like, oh, I'm crossing my arms. Why are you crossing your arms? Basically, are you, he thought I was really mad or I don't know what he thought. He just did. It was negative. And
it made him uncomfortable.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh, this is a bad thing. This is a bad thing. I'm crossing my arms. Well, I had neck problems and I was crossing my arms to support my neck so that I could hold it back. And so it's truly just to maintain my posture because I had neck problems. I didn't know that was upsetting him. Who knows how many people I had attended to, yeah, right. So that's just feedback, seek feedback.
Yeah. Absolutely. Be a student of your customers and seek feedback. And the word that comes to mind in addition is be open to and seek feedback. And there's
maybe.
Right? Okay, that was question number one. Question number two, you and I have just walked onto an elevator together.
Yeah.
Of course, we both have our masks on.
Mm-hmm.
We're going up to the 20th floor.
Right.
I turn to you and I say, hey, Tom, I saw you on LinkedIn Live the other day.
What do you do?
I just started my new role in sales. Any advice for me? And we got 20 floors.
Any advice for me? Gosh, the guy would want to go back to the first two things I said about learn your customers. Yeah, I would say if I just started my career in sales, here's the thing that I want to, and it's funny, this allows us to underscore something we haven't talked about. The guy that I told you, Tyler, that was lapping the field. You know what he said his number one thing was? Is discipline. Discipline. I think that's a little overlooked. All these things we're talking about, these soft skills, it doesn't matter how well we fish if we don't fish a lot. And so discipline, like come up with your plan, work your plan, and be disciplined. And I will say that's one of the big mistakes that I made. I kind of was sales came pretty easy to me, but I wasn't very disciplined. I didn't have a process, and I didn't follow my process, and I didn't plan. And regardless of what we talk about, if you don't have the disciplines of sales, I mean, sales really comes down to several things. It's skills, discipline, mindset. That's about it. And the discipline is really key. So I would say start there, because that's where you learn. You get going, and then you learn. You have more conversations and stay with it.
I'm really glad you said that, because we talk a lot about the soft skills. We talk a lot about, putting other people, making others the priority and other center and all that. But you're right. Without the discipline, that's not going to do you a lot of good. Now, if you have the discipline and some of these things that we're talking about, like, look out, right?
Yeah. If you know what's on the decision maker's whiteboard, and you become a student of the decision makers you serve and their whiteboard, and learning you read what they read, you learn what they struggle with. You have discipline and you're other centered. It's the way we talk about this. You're not self-centered, you're other centered. I mean, you just go ahead and write yourself a big check, because you're going to earn that money.
Yeah. Awesome. Tom, we are just about out of time. Do you have a hard stop, or can you handle?
No, I'm loving this, loving being with you. So
all right. So this this is the last question, and then I'll invite you to share some closing thoughts. If you could ask me one question, what might it be?
Oh man. Okay, so we haven't talked about this a lot in our interview, because we're talking about what's probably most different about what sellers need to do. But we have overlooked intentionally presenting and delivering your recommendation, right? So we both share a lot of research skills, frameworks for delivering our recommendation. And you focus, you're an expert in that, along with other things, but specifically that as well. I'd love to know what you think is really critical to delivering an effective, like if you said one thing, like when you go to deliver that recommendation or presentation or demo the product, what's the one thing?
Focus on the outcome.
Okay. Start with there.
Yeah. Lead with the outcome.
I love that.
Yeah, and look, in some of the workshops that we run, we talk about leading with the decision makers whiteboard and the disruptive truths, but as you well know, many of the people that I serve, we're in the role of giving demonstrations, giving software demonstrations, product demonstrations. The mistake that we make is we talk too much about, and we focus too much on the product and the things that it does, right? Actually, I don't know if you've ever seen me do this, Tom. One of my favorite sayings, and it is, he or she who buys a shovel doesn't want a shovel. They want a hole.
Right.
But they don't just want a hole. They want a fence, or they want a tree. But they don't just want a fence or a tree. They want privacy, or shade, or fruit, or flowers.
Yeah, right.
And you're gonna like this, Tom. We show up and we want to talk about the shiny shovel, right?
I love it.
We want to talk about the blade and the handle, right? And the strength and how wonderfully made it is. And here's the truth. Most people don't care about the shovel. Most people care about how can you help us achieve what we are trying to achieve?
That's brilliant. That's so simple, but so good.
So powerful.
Can I tell you a personal experience that I had
Please.
recently where someone did that well?
Yeah.
We were looking at renovating our house. Right. And so there's so many details, shovel details about windows and how they're going to do it and all the details and cost. I mean, there's just, I don't know, 20 potential topics to talk about, time frame, and so many things they could present, their design abilities and all the things they could talk about. She narrowed in on the one thing I cared about, the ultimate. What did you say? Begin with the focus on outcome.
Focus on the outcomes.
Her outcome was, you're not going to have to worry about anything.
Bingo.
We're going to do this. We're going to plan it. We're going to guarantee it. And you're not going to have to worry about anything.
Yeah.
It's going to be done.
Yeah.
I'm feeling it right now. I'm like, I love you. Because I was feeling the pressure. I was trying to do it myself, be the GC and get people coming and then track them down, and then they would leave and then go buy the right material and figure out which is. Because I'm an architect and I have a team, and that's our whole company is around. Yeah. We're going to take care of it, and it's be guaranteed. I'm like, that's the outcome.
Yep.
And I'm like,
yep.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's good. And we had a guy, Kelly Talamo, you probably know, is a great public speaker, does keynotes, speaks in front of thousands. He said the same thing.
Interesting.
What's your one thing?
Yeah.
What's your one takeaway? What's your one outcome?
Well,
I need to hear that. That's good.
Well, and by the way, Tom, I know you've seen people do this. People come to me all the time and say, Chris, I'm preparing for a meeting. Could I just run through my slides for you? Right. And of course, and we go through 10, 12, maybe 15 slides. And I don't say a word until the end. I say, love it. Take the last 2 slides and make them the first 2 slides. And don't say anything else unless they ask. Right? Because we all end with, at the end of the day, right?
When they're already
The
glazed
key
over.
point is,
Yeah, right.
And by then they're glassed over, right? I mean, demos are the same way. We spend 30 minutes putting our audience to sleep and say, at the end of the day, what matters most is click. That should be the first thing that you talk about.
That's great. That's great.
So,
That's awesome.
Tom, my friend, this has been an unbelievable delight for me. I can't believe it took us this long to get to this point, but
I was way down the list, Chris. I was way down the list. You got all these high profile guests, and you know
that's not true, but I was waiting for you to publish the book, and now the book is out, and that's fantastic. We are absolutely going to do this again. Any final thought, any thoughts or comments from you before we put a bow on this conversation?
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I've just absolutely loved working with you. You've inspired me. I've learned from you. And so what a gift. So, and thank you for having me on the show, my friend.
Thank you.
I would close with this idea of leading. I think that's something that I just want to put front and center for sellers do you have the expertise to lead? Because I think ultimately we need to be the leaders. The decision makers don't meet with sales reps because they have nothing to say. Right. So if you have something if you know how to lead them to the best solution, they will follow you. So do you have the expertise to lead? The book is all about getting that platform so people will let you lead. And yes, there's some things in the book that help you position your recommendation effectively to maintain and improve receptivity. But ultimately, it's about putting you in that position to lead them somewhere. And so we can get you in that position, but then do you know how to lead them? Do you have the expertise, or do you just know your stuff? Because we spend all day long, almost every day of the week, thinking about our stuff. Right. It's back to the gravitational pull to self. We learn about our stuff, we do our stuff. But could we be a consultant? Would they pay us as a consultant if we didn't sell anything?
That's really
I think that's something we really got. That's the next level.
Really good, Tom. Really good.
So
thank you so much. By the way, a few last minute shout outs. Lee Johnson, whom I've had a chance to meet a couple times. Lee, thanks for tuning in. David, I hope it's Piazzatelli. I hope he'll tell me otherwise. Corey Washington tuning in as well. Corey, thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Tom,
nice to meet you.
Tom, thank you so much, sir. Hang around for a minute after we close, and
okay. You want me to sign books?
Okay, I do. I do need a signed copy, by the way.
Okay, all right, happy to.
Folks, thank you so much for hanging on. We went a little more than an hour, but hopefully you enjoyed this. I know I did. If you did like this, please feel free to share. The hashtag Tech Sales Advice is out there. Follow the hashtag so you can catch all these episodes. And of course, as always, thank you so much for tuning in. Tom, thank you, sir. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will talk soon.
Thank you, my friend.
Cheers, buddy. Bye-bye.